I always had friends of mine that told me that I should go to New York. I don't know why, but it was just always in the background. Then a couple of friends of mine that were great jazz players moved here and made really great careers here. So I basically came up a couple of years after them.
That's the guitarist Oz Noy. I'm Jamie Green, and this is Trading Fours. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Trading Fours. I'm your host, Jamie Green, and got a quick question for you. When you think of hotbed areas, places to grow jazz musicians, what do you think of? New Orleans, right? And I'm guessing places like New York City. I'm hoping you're thinking of places like Kansas City, since we've had a lot of great jazz people. But how about Israel? No? Well, me neither, usually. But in the case of Oz Noy, Israel can bring great jazz artists. He's my guest today. Super great guitar player, jazz, fusion, blues. It's all mixed up, and Oz puts it together and makes it really sweet concoction. So I was really happy to talk to Oz. He joined me live from his apartment in New York City. And he's got a new album out called Snapdragon that hits the shelves on November 20th. Just in a few weeks from now, actually less than a couple weeks from now. So it was great to have him on. He's gonna out me. Somebody finally figured out that I'm a schmo on guitar. That I know things about guitar, certainly know things about rock and blues guitar, but my jazz knowledge, my specific jazz knowledge, not quite as good. So he's gonna out me. I get something wrong with one of the jazz guitar players' exact model of guitar, and I will live with that shame for the rest of my days. Anyway, so we're out ready to get started, but before we do, please, down in the show notes, I've got the link for you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. I have the link for you to subscribe on Spotify. Do that. And if you're digging this podcast, do me a favor, give me a review up on Apple Podcasts. It helps. Let's get some new people listening. So let's get started. Here's my conversation with Oz Noy. Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me here, and I appreciate the time. And Oz, I want to talk about your new album a lot, but I think probably the best way to introduce you to my listeners, mostly in Kansas City, but obviously you can listen to a podcast anywhere. But I'm kind of fascinated how a kid from Israel wants to be a jazz and fusion guitarist and move to New York City. So could you talk to me a little bit about that, how that process came about?
Yeah, in Israel, the jazz is very popular in Israel. And there's a lot of great jazz players in Israel, especially now. When I was growing up, there was still some, but now it's crazy. So, I don't know, jazz was always popular in Israel. Not as much of more like straight ahead, more than but when I was growing up, I don't know, my big brother brought a bunch of jazz records home. And it was like Chick Corea, Kid Jarrett, McLaughlin, Aldi Meola, that kind of stuff. George Benson, maybe.
Right.
I remember a Bobby McFerrin record. So that's how I got into it. But I also always played rock and did studio work. And, I've worked as a professional musician from a really young age. So I always had both kind of sides, like the jazz side, and you can call it the rock side,
Yeah,
and then I started to be aware of the guys that kind of mixed them all together, like Pat Metheny and Schofield and Stern and Alan Holdsworth, Scott Henderson, and then I got heavily into blues, so Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Johnson, I guess, Jeff Beck, Clapton. So to me, it was always everything, it wasn't one thing, But I studied jazz as jazz was like kind of my education,
Sure. Well, it's interesting you brought up some of those names. Obviously, Pat Metheny's from the Kansas City area.
Oh, yeah, he's from Kansas City, right.
Yeah, he grew up in Lee Summit, which is just a suburb. And you're talking about, I'm a guitar player. I'm not like you, but, Eric Johnson, C. Ray Vaughan, Mike Stern, John McLaughlin. You're talking my language.
Yeah.
So
Everybody's language, really.
yeah,
So then basically what happened is while I was growing up in Israel and I was working there a lot. Like, I was doing TV shows and some records and playing a lot of live gigs with, singer-songwriters there. But then I always played jazz. There was a lot of jazz gigs at the time. They're like little gigs. So I always had friends of mine that told me that I should go to New York. I don't know why, but it was just always in the background. Then a couple of friends of mine that were great jazz players moved here and made really great careers here. So I basically came up a couple of years after them. That's basically the story in short.
so this would have been what, mid-90s?
Yeah, mid 90s, 96, I moved to New York.
So that's got to be a little daunting, Oz. I mean, New York, obviously, it's not only because it's a huge city and very chaotic in a good way, but
Yeah.
it's high energy,
Yeah,
at least before COVID. And then I think that some of the greatest jazz players in the world are in New York.
absolutely. For sure.
So yeah, I assume that's a little daunting when you get off the plane and you step on and you have to be a part of the New York scene. So how did that go for you?
Well, when you're 24, you don't really think about that. You're like you got so much fire in you. You just want to explore. And I had a couple of good friends here, so that really helped. It doesn't help your musical upbringing, like your musical path, let's say. Even if some of my good friends were musicians and they were successful, it still doesn't do anything. It's just kind of good because they show you where things are. So I started to go to Smalls. The thing that really blew my mind was the jazz scene in New York. Well, I started to go to Smalls and seeing at the time the new giants like Brett Meldau and Brian Blade and Joshua Redman and I know Bill Stewart and Pete Bernstein and
Oh yeah.
Kurt Rosenwinkel. They were playing Smalls. So I saw a lot of that all the time. And then there's the 55 bar, and I used to see, I discovered Wayne Krantz, and then Stern was playing there all the time, and Adam Rogers and people. So you see, it's really easy to figure out the jazz scene in New York once you're here, because it all happens in a pretty small area, in a village.
Yeah.
Although I live on the Upper West Side, and right by me there was a club called August it was a bar called August where everybody used to play, and it turned into Smoke, that jazz club Smoke. So that's what was going on. But again, I also always played other kind of music, so
Yeah.
I wanted to just do everything really. So in the beginning, I couldn't really find the cool blues stuff or the cool R&B or the cool funk stuff. It's not really here. It was just a different kind of thing. So it took me a while till I found that stuff. And then I was just, I don't know, rolling, just like hanging out, going to jam session, meeting people, doing jams, like everything you can do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And I think there's this conception that if you want to be a jazz guitarist, you got to play a hollow body guitar, right? And you got to.
They used to be.
Yeah, you have to be.
God, it's over.
Yeah, you have to have the Wes Montgomery kind of thing.
When I grew up, it was really big, that thing. Like, when I grew up, I actually had a hollow body guitar.
Right.
I had a copy of a Wes Montgomery guitar, and I used to be a Wes Montgomery clone. I used to play with my thumb.
Right.
I used to play full Wes Montgomery records by heart. I could play the solos too. Like, I was really into that. And then I had a 175, but I never liked the feel of it and the sound of it as much as I liked the way the regular solid body electric guitar reacted. But at the time when I was growing up, especially in Israel, there was nobody playing like solid body jazz guitar, really.
Yeah, so you're kind of a Tele guy and a Strat guy, right? That's kind of what you.
I would say a Strat and a Tele, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've seen some clips of you with Mike Stern, and obviously he's a Tele guy, and he did an album with Eric Johnson. So I like the idea that that there's no hard rules, that you don't have to be pigeonholed into one thing. That if you like the music and you like the style and you want to play it, right?
Yeah. First of all, Stern is, when you say a Tele guy, like I have a certain thing in my head. Stern never played a Telecaster. None of his guitars were ever a Telecaster. He
It
used to
looks
have an
like a
old,
Tele, right?
yeah, he
Yeah.
used to have an old Strat that I think was stolen. For a minute, he had, I think, maybe a real Tele for half a second, but that guitar that he uses, it's not a Tele. It just looks like a Tele, and it's got those humbuckers in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're
Um,
keeping me on my toes, Oz. I should have pointed it out that it's not really a tele. It's its own guitar, right? I don't remember who
yeah,
makes it.
it's a Tele buddy, yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's Yamaha. Yamaha makes those.
Okay. Well, it's
Yeah,
good to know. So I want to talk to you about the new album, Looney Tooney. There's
sure.
the track. I'm sorry, Snapdragon is the name of the
Yeah,
album.
yeah.
I really dig it, man. Dude, you got a ton of great players playing with you on this album. I mean, it's a laundry list of great musicians. So that alone had to be a lot of fun, right?
Well, I've been doing this for many years. This is my 10th solo album, and I always use those guys. So to me, it's nothing really different. There's always somebody new, but the core of the band, like I've been playing with Willie and James Genus for like, I don't know, probably close to 20 years now.
So
And
most
I've been,
I was
what's
gonna
that?
just I was just gonna say most people obviously will know Will Lee from when he was on David Letterman, but that's just
Yeah,
a small
and
portion of it.
James Genus is the bass player for Saturday Night Live. But they've played with everybody. But they've been my bass players since the early 2000s, really, even before. So that's not new to me. With Patitucci, I've played on and off for, I don't know, the last maybe 8 years or something. Um, Dave Wackel, I've been playing pretty steadily with for over 10 years. We did a lot of tours. We did a couple of records together. Dennis Chambers, Vinny Colaiuta, I've been playing on and off with since almost the beginning of my solo career, since maybe 2006. He played on a couple of my records. Dennis Chambers is the only guy that I started to play with recently, meaning like the last 2-3 years. But I never use people on my records, rhythm section, I mean, not guests, but people on my record that I don't play with steadily, it's like that I don't play with. So we have to do some tours or rehearsal or something because I don't believe in just going into the studio and playing you know what I mean? To me,
Right.
it needs to gel. So that's nothing new to me in terms of the guys. They've been playing on all my other records. The guests, I always try to have, interesting guests. So Chris Potter is a guy that played on one of my other records. I know him from New York. Adam Rogers is a good friend of mine. We had a little band together. Dave Kikowski, the keyboard player, plays in my jazz band here group. Who else? Wallace Roney. I've been a huge fan of him. I've done one tribute Miles record with him, but he was the only guy that was kind of like, not I wasn't as tight with, but everybody else, like Brian Charette that plays keyboards on the whole thing,
I
plays with
was
me. Jason Linder, those guys are friends of mine, really.
well. That's a nice thing to have, Oz. I mean,
It's great.
all these drummers you're talking about. I think they're in the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame, right? I mean, these aren't just drummers; these are drummers, right?
Probably, I don't know,
Yeah.
but the thing with me is one thing happened when I'm thinking about it now as I'm getting a little older than I'm not 24 anymore. But one thing for me was it was a big thrill for me when I moved to New York to start playing with the real guys. Like there's not, you can listen to, I don't know, somebody like let's say Steve Ferroni, like he's the famous kind of studio drummer. He plays with the Heartbreakers, and it's one thing to listen to somebody on a record, but it's a whole other experience when you play with him for real live. So when you play with Will or with Wackel or with Vinny, all those guys, it's a whole other thing. So for me, when I moved to New York, it was a big deal for me to really play with those guys because I wanted to be on the level and just kind of experience it. So once once it became like those are the guys that I play with, it's just a normal thing for me.
That's great. I mean, every time I'm in New York, I try to go see somebody.
Sure.
I saw Lee Rettenauer with his son and
Sure.
Hadrian Farrard playing bass.
Sure.
I mean, how fun is that? I mean, that's just, I
Great.
mean, you can't have, it was me and my buddy and about 200 Japanese people at this show.
Sure, the Blue. Yeah, I've seen them also. I think I was there that week at one of the shows.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And sad, obviously with Wallace, it's so sad that he passed away from COVID. What a great player. My dad was a trumpet, played trumpet. He was a big band trumpet player. And Wallace obviously was such a great player and certainly had a connection with Miles and stuff. So I really dug the track. It was kind of bittersweet to listen to it. He wasn't that old.
No. I don't know how old he was, but he wasn't that old. Yeah. But he was, the last I've seen him on the recording that I did, and I've seen him on that record there that I've done with him maybe a while ago, and in both times I've seen him, he didn't look that healthy to me.
Yeah, it's sad. Well, let's talk happy things though. So I really dig your Instagram page, Oz, because I love that you do these contortionate chords where your hands...
those weird chords.
Yeah. That's good for guitar players to see that, because some of those chords, I swear, you just you need to grow another knuckle or stretch your hand out.
I do it as a joke though. I don't do it as an I do it kind of as a goof. To me, it's just like I even say it. It's like it's useless chords. It's like it'll take you like half a minute to just put your fingers and stretch them to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some funny meme of a chord that's supposedly supposed to be a chord, and your fingers are crossed over each other to play it. So I get a kick out of that. And then also, real quick, I know you're doing this. I think it's for people in Australia. You're doing a master class. Is that next
Friday,
week?
Yeah, Friday.
This week.
Friday, yeah.
So tell me why Australia, and how does all this work?
A guy from Australia just asked me to do it. That's pretty much how it works.
Well, that's nice. So I'll put it in the show notes if people want to check that out.
Yeah, there's a link either on my Facebook page or on my Instagram. There's the information. It's one of the latest posts that I posted, maybe one before last, so you can see it.
Yeah.
Join.
Well, I always, people send me their music ahead of time, and your person did that for me too. I really dug the album a lot. I always do this while I jog. It's great to have people in your ears while you're jogging, kind of stuff. So I liked all of it, but specifically, I really, the Groove and Grant tune.
Yeah.
As a guitar player, and the fact that you did that with Adam, talk to me about that. Like, why'd you decide to do it with Adam and that track? Can you walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Me and Adam Rogers, guitar player. To me, Adam Rogers is one of the greatest guitar players of all time. Really, it doesn't really get any better than this guy. So, we have this little band that we play in New York on and off. It's not like a real band, but just like me and him and a drummer and a bass player. And over the years, we played a bunch together. And I really like doing stuff with two guitars. It's just fun for me, and it's a very educational experience too, especially when you play with someone like him. So we played a bunch together, and when I decided to record this tune, I thought about, it would be cool to have another guitar player on it. And I've had other guitar players on my other records. It's just, like Stern played on my record, Eric Johnson played on even two. And Steve Lukather played on one of my records. Bonamassa played, Robin Ford. There's a lot of people that played on my old records. I like to have another guitar player. So Adam, because we were playing so much, we had this thing that we were doing. I thought it would just blend really well, because it's a tune that me and him, we're in the same kind of headspace with our tastes, with certain things. So that's pretty much was it. And then also we played it live a bunch because we did a bunch of gigs, so it was easy to do. So I assume it's Grant Green is the Grant you're talking about? Yeah, although it was supposed it's more like a Wes Montgomery vibe than Grant Green vibe, but I don't know. I won't tell anybody, Oz. Yeah, don't tell anybody. Yeah, well, he was a St. Louis guy, so Grant? Yeah, I think so. Oh wow! I'll double check. Oh. Somebody will tell me if I'm wrong when this goes up. Yeah, I don't know. So obviously everything with COVID has put everybody, a big monkey wrench into your plan. So I assuming you were going to be playing a bunch of shows and highlighting these tracks and stuff. So Is the plan the second
we had some good news from from Pfizer about a vaccine and stuff. So is the plan, Oz, the second you get the okay, you're up and out playing a bunch of shows?
I guess, yeah, but I don't know how it's gonna work. It might take a minute. To me, I think the most important thing to me right now is if we can get rid of this thing. It's probably gonna take a while. Like it would be gradual, but at least that the local scene is gonna start coming back to some like that. At least people can start playing again and just hanging and doing like studio work. Like I do some studio work sometimes. Like I do a lot of stuff out of my house, but I do stuff here and there when I go out. It's just not fun, it's just stressful and uncomfortable. So everybody we do it, but I just wish this part will be over.
Yeah.
Like the touring, like the going out all over the world and tour, that might take a minute. I'm fine with it. Eventually it'll come back and it's fine. But the local stuff is really, I really hope that will come back sooner than later.
Yeah, because a lot of these clubs may not make it. Some of them already have.
That's another thing, Who knows what condition the city would be once this is done,
Yeah. A lot of places are just, and a lot of people left New York and aren't coming back, right?
I know. That's what they say. I don't know.
Which is too bad. It's such a great city. If people haven't been to New York, I have a friend she thinks New York is still 1985 New York. And I was like, dude, it's safer there than here.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not 1985. I wasn't here in 1985, but even from the time that I moved till now, it's a whole other thing,
No, and people just get these ideas in their head. I always, obviously when I go to New York, I'm either in, Williamsburg and Brooklyn, or I'm up by where you're living, the Upper West Side or whatever. I mean, I'm not hanging out in the Bronx, but I always feel safe. And if you love food, if you love music, if you love history, if you love art, any of those things,
it's a great place.
You got to come. I mean, I go for 2-3 days. I exhaust myself.
Sure.
And I get on a plane and I go home.
Yeah, you're close, it's not a problem. Yeah.
No, it's a 2.5-2-hour flight. It's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing, yeah.
So have you played here ever, Oz? Have you ever been to Kansas City?
I played in Kansas City on a tour with, I think I did, with, I was touring with Adina Menzel. I did 2 of her tours. So she played, I think we were there on one of her tours, I'm pretty sure.
See, I saw her. She played at the Starlight a couple of years ago, and it got delayed because of thunderstorms, and it was an outdoor. Were you at that one or some other one?
Maybe that was, I can't remember. I don't know. Maybe it was an outdoor thing. Maybe, I can't remember. When you do those tours, I don't know, it's like so many dates, and it's, you just forget what's what,
Yeah. Well, I probably saw you then.
Maybe.
I was up front. My wife's a huge Idina Menzel fan, so she told me we're going.
I remember something about, I remember, it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, that was the show.
Oh, that was the show, because I remember one show we had to wait till the rain stuff. So that was in Kansas?
Yeah, that was, yeah, we were sitting in our car as the rain's pouring down, waiting for the all clear to come in. So
yeah, so I guess I was on it.
That's funny. Well, you've been there. Well, I'd love to have you back. There's we have some really great jazz venues here, and some.
Yeah, I never played my band there. I don't think I have. No, I haven't.
Well, maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe someday.
Come out.
I would love to.
We would love to. So Oz, people, obviously, like I said, the new album is Snapdragon. I highly recommend it. What's the best way for people that they want to learn more about you? Is it your Instagram page that we just talked about? Is it your website? What's the best way to follow you?
Everything. If you just Google me, you can see all that stuff. But Instagram, Facebook's always good. You can go on the website. There's not much action going on my website right now because it's just like nothing. There's no tours or anything like that. But in general, when things are normal, then my dates are on my website. But also there's a lot of stuff you can get. Well, you can get the records. You can get charts. There's some instructional videos and stuff that you can get through the website. So just the usual.
Yeah. So what's like a normal day like now?
A normal day now is I get up. I don't know. I try to meditate a little bit. I do yoga kind of regularly. I try to do that. Then I just practice, or I do have stuff going on in that. Like I get sessions sometimes here. Or I teach online a little bit. So that's pretty much it. There's not much else. So between that and I don't know, going outside, getting fresh air, that's pretty much all that's going on.
You got to do it now before it gets too cold.
I know, that's the problem. That's what everybody's
worried
about now. Yeah.
Well, I told my wife, because I think our weather's pretty close to yours as far as, the seasons. And I told my wife, I was like, last Thursday it was sunny and like 80. And I was like, we got to go have dinner outside somewhere because, pretty soon we're just going to be staring at each other for like 3 months. Yep. Wondering why. This is still going on.
I know. This is we're about to get in it again. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's really nice to meet. I mean, you touched all my buttons, Oz. When you start naming off these names of all these dudes that I've followed forever, and the fact that you get to play with them now, that speaks volumes about your talent and your abilities. And I was aware of you some, but I really did a deep dive before this interview and really dug it and really like your stuff a lot. And I highly recommend folks check them out. And I really hope that we get an all clear sooner than later. I hate that all these musicians are sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah.
I mean, live music is such a great part of a musician's life, getting that ability to interact with the crowd. And obviously, especially with what you guys do, because, so much of it, you improvise parts of it and stuff. It's that collaboration. And please come out to Kansas City.
I will. As soon as this is over, I'll do my best.
Yeah, I'll take you out, whatever you want. Sure. We'll get some good food. We've got some, besides Pat Metheny, there's some other. Danny Embry's a really good guitar player here. I don't know if you know Danny at all. And would love to just say hello and watch you play live.
Sure. I'll love to.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate the time. Be safe.
All right, thanks. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Oz Noy, everybody. A lot of fun. And for the record, Mike Stern plays the Yamaha PAC 1611 MS. I got that wrong. But to my defense, Mike Stern has said in interviews that he used to play a Fender Telecaster, which he got from Danny Gatton. And before that, it was Roy Buchanan's. And he said it was a great guitar that was literally stolen from him at gunpoint in Boston. And that's when he went to Yamaha and asked them to build a guitar like that. And that's why he plays Yamaha. So, didn't get it completely wrong. On a serious note, be sure to check out Oz's new album, Snapdragon. It comes out on November 20th. And it was so cool to talk to him. And, you learn something in every podcast. Who knew that I actually have seen Oz perform? I just didn't know it because I was at Idina Menzel listening to about 400 little girls sing Let It Go. But appreciate the time, Oz. Thanks so much. Please come back on. Please tell Mike and everybody else. Love to have them on us, too. So that's going to do it for today's Trading Floor. Hey, next time, I've got the great jazz singer here in town, Joanna Berkebile. She's got a new album out. Her and her bandmates are going to join me, and we're going to talk all about it. So look forward to that. We're going back to Kansas City. Until then, go out and support live music, either virtually or in person, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.